Child care licensing regulations. This is a list of all of the rules and statutes that govern you as a licensed child care provider in the state of Minnesota. We don't make this determination. The state doesn't make this determination. What determines all of these rules and statutes are the Minnesota legislators. They make the rules and the statutes, they change them. So all of these rules and statutes up here govern you as a licensed child care provider. You are going to be responsible to know them. It's not okay to say, I didn't know that, I didn't read that. You are responsible once you become a licensed child care provider to know the rules and statutes. Rule 2 is what started licensed child care providers in the state of Minnesota years ago. This has been a long-standing rule for family child care. A lot of things have been moved out of the daycare rule or Rule 2 into statute, but there are still things in Rule 2 that you need to comply with, you need to follow. So you may want to print this off or put it electronic on your computer, but make sure that you're reading the rules and statutes and that you know what the requirements are. Chapter 245A is also known as the Human Services Licensing Act. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of things have moved out of the rule into statute. Those are easier to change than the daycare rule, so a lot of things have moved into statute so that the legislators can more easily change those items that they want to change. The Human Services Licensing Act governs a lot of license programs in the state of Minnesota. It's not only child care, it's foster care, it's residential treatment, it's chemical dependency programs. So when you're reading this over, you're going to have to make sure that you are reading what pertains to child care. And they do spell it out, what applies to child care and what doesn't. So make sure that you're reading this over, that you're aware of what the requirements are, and this does change on a yearly basis pretty much. Whenever the legislators meet, there's probably going to be changes to this. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep updated on any of these changes. 245C is also known as the Human Services Background Study Act. This primarily deals with any disqualifications, any background study information that you may need to know. You are required to know this too, because if somebody moves into your home or you need to do a background study on somebody, you need to know if there's going to be a disqualification, if that person is going to affect your daycare license, and what the background study process is. So you are required to know the background study piece as well. Chapter 13 of the Minnesota Government Data Practices Act, it defines data and guides the handling of the information. You do become a public facility, so there is some information that is public on you. There's some information that's private. There's some information that's confidential. There's also some information as a licensed provider, you cannot share information with other families. So this chapter talks about what's public, what's private, what you need to make sure that you are practicing good data privacy practices. Reporting and maltreatment of minors. This defines abuse, neglect, what your responsibilities are as far as a licensed child care provider. Once you become licensed, you are a mandated reporter, and there are things that you are required to report. So you're going to want to make sure that you read over this statute and know what your requirements are as far as a mandated reporter and what you need to report and who you need to report to. Prohibitions. This one covers smoking prohibitions in child care settings. With the Minnesota Clean Air Act, there are requirements as a licensed child care provider that you need to notify parents that smoking does happen in your home after hours. Maybe there's a cigarette smoker, maybe there's a e-cigarette smoker. You do need to notify families that maybe smoking occurs after hours, and you are required to post a notification and notify parents. So if you fall into that category where you have somebody that smokes in your home, you're going to want to make sure that you read that statute and you're complying with the Minnesota Clean Air Act. If you have an above-ground pool, there may be environmental health statutes that you're required to know. So you want to check out that statute. The Minnesota State Fire Marshal. As I mentioned earlier, you may have to have a fire inspection in a licensed child care home. This site will help you understand what they're going to look for in a fire inspection, what your requirements are as far as a licensed child care provider, what you need to have in your home. So you'll want to read the Minnesota State Fire Marshal code and understand that for licensed child care providers as well.